Good morning, everyone. This is such a joyful gathering. It's such a great opportunity to greet colleagues. So we started a little bit slower than usual, but good morning. And happy Valentine's Day, everyone. For those who celebrate, and like my husband does, you know, it's like, I don't know about celebrating that. But I'm Jane Saldana-Talley, your Vice President of Academic Affairs, and it's my heartfelt honor to welcome you all and officially open SRJC's Spring 2019 Professional Development Activity Day. That includes all of you here in the Carol L. Ellis Auditorium and also those of you in the Fitness Center Overflow Room. We can't see them, but they can definitely hear us. So hi to everyone out there. I hope that each and every one of you has had a smooth transition into spring semester. I am truly thankful for your continued kindness and devotion to the difficult work we are doing together at this crucial moment in our history. I also confess to loving spring PDA, probably more than any other event, with the exception of commencement, just for the simple pleasure that it affords me and the rest of you to sit with you and simply be enthralled by one of SRJC's best faculty. The Tauzer Lecture series was a gift of love to generations of employees, and I am deeply grateful that you have joined us here today. Before I get too far into my opening remarks, I'd like to acknowledge that we have a member of our Board of Trustees in the auditorium with us today, Trustee Maggie Fishman, former board president. And later on today, I anticipate with the panel that we will see Board President Jordan Burns and probably Student Trustee Robert Martinez. And then also with us today is our Student Government Assembly President Eduardo Osorio Juarez. So when you see them here, greet them. It matters a lot that you're here with us this morning. PDA support. The heavy lifting for a production like today's PDA Day falls on many hands, including outstanding staff in media services, facilities and grounds, the warehouse, district police, disability resources, information technology, and of course our hosts, our continued hosts here in Petaluma while we're refreshing Burbank Auditorium. I'd especially like to thank the SRJC Human Resources team for all they do behind and in front of the scenes year-round to plan, coordinate, and worry over events such as this. Let's show them our appreciation. I'd now like to ask the members of the Professional Development Committee to stand and be recognized for the selfless hard work they invest in making this day and so many others a worthwhile experience for us all. Members of the Professional Development Committee, please stand so we can recognize you. Thank you. Today's PDA features Dr. Heidi Saleh, our amazing Tauzer lecturer, and over 50 individual workshops. It's no easy thing preparing these sessions, and I'd like to ask that if you're a presenter in the audience, and you know who you are, please stand so that we can recognize you as a collective and thank you for your efforts. So we at SRJC are committed to making PDA a zero-waste event, and this year is no exception. Thanks to our dedicated staff here in Petaluma and supported by our very favorite waste diversion technician, Guy Tillotson. Who I believe is a presenter today, which I'm very excited about. It has become a tradition to have reusable coffee cups and silverware at lunch on PDA days. And thanks to every single one of you who for supporting our sustainability initiative and doing what we can to keep this zero waste. One quick announcement, we've implemented a new online option for workshop evaluations this spring. So in addition to the full PDA survey that you normally get, there's going to be, at the end of the day, there's a link to an online survey so that you can rate individual workshops. I'm going to warn you, there is only one log on. So once you log on, if you decide to do it in your first session to do your rating, and you try to go back to do the next rating, you're not going to be able to log on. So log on one time at the end of the day. For those of you who love paper, don't talk to Guy. But we will, for this session, have the half-page paper evaluations in each room. So now it's my most sincere pleasure to hand the microphone over to SRJC's 5th Superintendent President, Dr. Frank Chong. Let's show him some love.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day. How's everybody doing? Good morning. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Black History Month. Happy Chinese New Year's, Lunar New Year's, Year of the Pig. And before I begin, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize a friend and a colleague, someone who's served the JC for many years at the Santa Rosa campus, but more at the Petaluma campus. I appreciate Doug Garrison. Doug, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. And we're into 101, year 101. So as we reflect back on the 100th year, it was filled with a lot of stuff. And for me personally, it was probably the most difficult year while at the JC. But I'm just pleased to say and really come here with a spirit of gratitude and thank everybody who has supported me and the college through these difficult times. I like to think that we've kind of turned the corner and we're making progress in terms of working in a more collaborative way, in a more transparent way, and having better communication. And we have difficult tasks ahead. You know, the college is going through a lot of changes with the fire, with the changing demographics, with the state of the economy. Sonoma County now is the 8th most expensive county to live in California. Last year, more people moved out of Sonoma County. I think it was over 2,700 people than any other county in California. And that's the kind of statistics that I was citing to Chancellor Eloy Oakley when I met with him in Sacramento recently to talk about when he said, how's the progress going? And I said, it's very slow. That we are probably going to be requesting more additional time in order to recover from the fire, because we have a 3-year window with an opportunity for year 4 and 5. And so therefore, I think we have a very strong argument to maintain our fire relief funding beyond year 3. But having said that, it gives us an opportunity to really find sustainability for our budget. And I think I really want to thank Kate Jolly, our interim Vice President of Budget and Business, for really turning around how we have a conversation about the budget. I met with, thank you. Let's give Kate a big round of applause. And I think we really have a path forward. We're really being honest about the numbers, and we're really trying to work collaboratively to figure it out. So in the area of instruction, you know, we've had to reduce our schedule, and we reduced it by close to 9% this semester and the previous semesters. And yet, when I talk to Josh Adams and say, well, how are the classes going? He says, well, the fill rates are higher. We had to cut 80 sections that were low enrolled, but yet we have 120 sections that are under 20, but we're keeping because we need to do that in order for our students to succeed. So we're trying to do things in a thoughtful way. So the other thing that's the buzz around the campus is the early retirement incentive, which the board passed earlier this week. And it's really an opportunity for us to recognize the contributions of longtime employees, both managers, faculty, and staff, and also give us an opportunity to right-size the college. So I encourage all of you to really take a look at, if you're qualified and meet the eligibility requirements, to go to the group sessions and individual sessions if you like, and figure out what's best for you. Retirement is a very individual decision, and it's something you all have to do with your family and your financial advisors. And I think what will happen post-ERI is an opportunity for us to reshape the college, look at what we're going to do and what we're not going to do anymore. But you know, very clearly, our goals and our mission is around transfer, career education, and providing as much for the community as possible. So we're going to have those very difficult but necessary conversations. So I'm really optimistic about that. In the area of student services, through the leadership of Pedro Avila, our Vice President, we really are moving very aggressively to get more students to come to the college who can't afford to go to college. We have a financial aid awareness month. We're doing a lot of activities to get students to fill out their financial aid applications. We're working with the Doyle Trust. The Doyle Trust is now back to, I think, close to $4 million a year. Exchange Bank is doing very well, and therefore the dividends that we receive from Exchange Bank is affording more opportunities for our students to become Exchange Bank scholars. And also to the foundation. I think about 3 years ago, when I met with Kate McClintock, the foundation director, I said, what's the goal for the 100th year anniversary? And she said, $15 million, Dr. Chong. And I went, $15 million? How are we going to raise $15 million? And even with the fire recovery, I got a report yesterday, we're at $12.5 million for our students and faculty. So let's give a big round of applause to the foundation. Because these students need scholarships, and we're going to do everything we can to make college affordable for our community. The other areas in student services, we're really reaching out to different populations which we haven't before. So we have a Second Chance Club now, which are ex-offenders who are coming back into the community and transitioning and trying to get education. I want to really specifically recognize Rhonda Fidley for her work. And Rhonda tirelessly works, and she wears me out with emails. Can you come to this? Can you come to that? And I did come to an event where we had a party to celebrate one of our extraordinary students, Liz Quiros. Liz had a rough beginning, and she came to me and said, Dr. Chong, would you write me a letter? I'm trying to get a pardon from the governor, and can you reach out to Senator McGuire to see if we can do that? And I said to myself, most pardons are done really at the latter part of your life, not at the beginning, because they want to see that you've had a life without being in criminal activity. But with Liz's determination and with Rhonda's support, Liz was granted a pardon from the governor before he left office. So I want to thank Rhonda and the Second Chance program. So we're doing a lot of outreach in the students, with the Students for Recovery, another great club, working with students who are recovering from abuse issues, and they're doing a lot of great work. So I'm really confident that we're really reaching out in the community. We're going to all the high schools, trying to get out there, get the word about the JC. But the best ambassadors for the JC are the people in this audience. So I really ask you, talk to a neighbor, talk to friends who want to come to the JC. And it's a great opportunity. We're still a great college. Last year, in spite of all the fiscal challenges, we gave more certificates and more degrees than in the history of the college in our 100th year. So I want to thank all the faculty and counselors and librarians for helping us with that. So as we move forward, I would just say we're going to try to keep doing the things we've been doing, which is communicating with you, listening to you, and trying to take into the input that you give us to make better informed decisions. The college is on, I think, an upward trajectory. Things are going to happen in a way that's going to continue to allow us to be excellent, but in a different way. You know, times change, and today is an opportunity for you to hear from your colleagues about some of the cutting-edge technologies and innovations that we're looking at. So we really have an opportunity to learn from one another, and I'm really, really, again, excited about this spring semester, and I want to thank you. I'll end with a quote by Shirley Chisholm, the former congresswoman, who said, "Progress isn't made by standing on the sidelines. Progress is made by implementing ideas." And that's what we're doing. We're implementing ideas at the JC, and I thank you all for your support, and let's have a great PDA Day. Thank you. And now I have the honor and pleasure of introducing Tara Jacobson and Lynn Larson, who have been spearheading the PDA Day, and they're going to talk to you about the Tauzer Lecture. Let's give them a big round of applause for their hard work.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lynn Larson, and I am the Faculty Professional Development Coordinator, and we cannot take credit for all of PDA Day because it is a huge effort. HR puts a lot behind it and all the support, and as well as the whole committee. So again, I just want to thank the committee, and it's not just about us. We're just representing the committee and faculty in particular. I want to welcome Tara back from sabbatical and thank Tammy Sakanashi again for her work that she did in the fall for faculty professional development. So welcome back. And I wanted to share a few highlights about what we're doing in faculty professional development. We have 10 new faculty who have gone through orientation And their first year, they're in the middle of their first year learning experience. It's going very well, and then we have a total of 25 faculty from first year and second year participating in the communities of practice this spring. So it's a wonderful opportunity for them to get to know people outside of their department and dig in a little deeper about best pedagogy and learning. We also have a number of faculty participating in the second annual Leadership Academy. So that's going on now. It just started. We had the first one last week. And let's see what else. Workshops and activities are offered every week, which you see in the email blasts. And then we just launched the Faculty Appreciative Observation, and we're doing it a little differently this year. It's going to be for March and April. And so you will be contacting the faculty directly that you would like to observe. So this is just an opportunity for us to, see best practices happening and just observe other teachers who we've always admired, like Tauzer Lectures and others who have volunteered their classroom and said, come on in, you can come in and watch. So please participate in that. Tara just sent out an email yesterday, and we'll be sending it out once a week, trying to solicit more people. So Tara's going to talk to us about Tauzer Lecture.
Hi, good morning. How are you? The Brook Tauzer Faculty Lecture is the highlight of PDA Day each spring and an honor for the faculty member selected to give it. The Tauzer Lecture is a long-time SRJC tradition since 1987, named in honor of Brook Tauzer. Brook Tauzer was an emeritus professor of history and former vice president of instruction, vice president of academic affairs at SRJC. Brook was the first VP of instruction and in fact was the first VP of anything at SRJC. He worked at the college from 1955 through 1986 and frequently taught classes throughout his career. While working in the Office of Instruction, Brook collaborated with a small group of originators who were responsible for the beginning and establishment of both the Petaluma Center, now the Petaluma campus, which we're on, and Schoen Farm. Brook is cherished for his warmth, integrity, and dedication to academic excellence. The Tauzer Lecture is an SRJC faculty member who has been selected for teaching excellence by a committee consisting of former Tauzer lecturers. It's my pleasure to introduce Sean Martin, last year's Tauzer Lecturer, who will be introducing this year's Tauzer Lecture. Thank you.
If I appear confused, it's because I am. If I could get the clicker, that would be lovely. Okay. While we're waiting for that, good morning, everybody. What a difference a year makes. Before I begin, I just want to remind you all that the conversation with the Tauzer Lecturer reception will take place at 10:15 in the Mahoney Library Reading Room. So I hope you can join us for that discussion. And excuse me 1 minute, please. Technology makes everything easier. Okay. So today, I have the privilege and delight to introduce this year's Tauzer Lecturer, Heidi Saleh. As you will all shortly affirm, Heidi is a person of marvelous distinction, and it's an honor to name her our colleague. Click. Who is the real Heidi Saleh? To borrow an apt expression from Walt Whitman, Heidi Saleh contains multitudes. Heidi describes herself as living between worlds. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Jane. I'll resist a comment about philosophers. Okay. Heidi describes herself as living between worlds. Much of her childhood was spent navigating the geographical and cultural territory between her birthplace in Cairo, Egypt, and her adoptive home in Davis, California, where her parents relocated when she was only an infant. But this description, living between worlds, runs deeper, as her career is something of a bridge, not just across space, but millennia. Here's Heidi in her childhood backyard. Directly behind her, between the Great Pyramids, you'll see the Cairo suburb of Giza, where she spent her early years. She could see the Great Pyramids from her bedroom window, though most of her neighbors paid them little mind. That's where tourists go, they say. But even at a very early age, the monuments of this ancient civilization held a deep fascination for Heidi. But hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with the easy stuff. All right? Heidi received her BA in Archaeological Studies and Anthropology at the University of Texas in Austin and completed her master's and PhD in Egyptian Art and Archaeology at the University of California at Berkeley. And of course, she's currently serving as department chair in SRJC's art department, where she specializes in art history. But did you know? Heidi was also a competitive diver. Her father, a serious diver himself, encouraged her to pursue the sport. And since Heidi hardly does anything halfway, she became so accomplished that she represented Egypt on their national team, only missing the Atlanta Olympics because the team lacked funding to attend. I know. Oh. In fact, when Heidi and her husband Mohammed first met at the University of Texas, she had just finished competing in the Mediterranean Cup. And did you know that Heidi attended school in Cairo run by French nuns? Can you see her? Here's her 4th grade class photo. Heidi was a chatty student. She recalls rubbing her hands together to warm them before the strike of the ruler. And did you know that during her graduate studies, Heidi excavated the tombs of workers who built the great monuments of Egypt? Here she is with a classmate after a long day of digging. Muhammad said she called him one evening, delighted to report, "Oh, guess what? I just discovered a tomb with a curse. It was so cool. I got to translate the curse." During one of those archaeological expeditions, Heidi settled a testy dispute with a local landlord regarding rent for the archaeologist's lodgings. Using her cultural and linguistic knowledge, she was able to detect the source of the misunderstanding between them. A local villager was so grateful, they rewarded Heidi with a cage of pigeons. Heidi's interest in archaeology began at a very early age. Here she is again, about the age of 3, at the tomb of an ancient nobleman. Heidi reports, "It seems like yesterday in my mind. Even at this age, I was trying to make sense of it all. I couldn't get enough. Who are these magical people frozen in time?" So I'm going to turn to a different subject. Heidi's family is a dramatic illustration of the challenges and triumphs of immigration to the United States. Here's Heidi as an infant with her teta, Arabic for grandma. In 1965, the Immigration and Naturalization Act abolished the quota system based on national origin, establishing a new policy that allowed her parents, both professors at Cairo University, to fulfill their dream of studying and working in the United States. Unable to bring Heidi along with them, they had to leave her with her teta and 12 aunts and uncles. "What's one more?" said her grandmother. Like so many immigrants, Heidi's parents made a choice that they believed would create a brighter future for their family. Just imagine the sacrifice, though. Here's Heidi at age 3, getting to know her parents. Phone calls were expensive and so infrequent. She knew very little about her parents. They had just returned to Egypt to bring her back to the US for the first time. Perhaps you can see just a tinge of apprehension in her first passport photo. While in the United States, Heidi very much missed her grandmother, aunts, and uncles, the only family she had really known. Adjusting to life in California wasn't easy. Over the years, she spent her time between Giza and Davis, adapting to the challenges each posed. Along the way, Heidi has mastered several languages, among them English, French, Arabic, German, but also during graduate school, she learned the languages of the Rosetta Stone, ancient Greek, Middle Egyptian Demotic, and early Egyptian hieroglyphics. But among her most proud moments is mastering the American accent, by studying the great masters of American letters, Madonna and Whitney Houston. We all know the peer review on the playground can be much more vicious than the peer review at the Journal of Archaeological Science. Okay. Living in California, struggling with the question of her identity, Heidi drew upon her early fascination with Egyptian art and history. Here she is at the age of 9, just before her big move to the US. She's posing before the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, perhaps the first all-stone structure ever built. Over the years, Heidi has traveled between Egypt and California many times, recently returning with her husband Mohammed, helping their children Kareem and Lila to discover their own Egyptian heritage. But all this only scratches the surface, folks. These wondrous expeditions display but a glimpse of Heidi's grace and courage, culminating in her recent struggle and her survival of breast cancer. We're all so grateful to have Heidi back this spring. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming this spring's Tauzer Lecturer, the amazing and wonderful Heidi Saleh.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Sean. That was a very generous introduction and very embarrassing photos, but that's okay. It's part of the deal. I am beyond honored to be here to give you the Tauzer Lecture today. It's been a year in the making. It's been a rough year for me, a traumatic year in many ways, but sometimes beautiful things come out of those obstacles. So I'll never forget it. It was a year ago, almost a year ago to the day, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And a few days after my diagnosis, I get this really urgent email from Sean. We need to talk. I need to meet you. And I'm department chair, so I'm used to these kinds of, requests. And I said, okay, let's talk on the phone. Nope, we need to meet in person. I was like, oh, geez, what's going on, right? So I go and we meet Sean. I meet Sean, and he shares with me this wonderful news. He's like, Heidi, surprise, we've selected you to be the next Tauzer Lecturer. And I'm holding back the tears because the contrast was so bittersweet. Days before I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I had no idea. The diagnosis wasn't filled. I didn't know where I was going to be a year from then, right? And so I looked at him and he said to me, you got to do what you got to do, decide what you need to decide. But one of the things that really touched me, he said, just remember, there's no hair length requirement for the Tauzer Lecture. And when he said that, I knew I was going to do this lecture. I knew I was going to do it, and I replied to him very quickly saying, yes, I'll take this on. It's a year out. It's going to be a big journey, and in this journey, I will transform, and I will learn a lot, and hopefully I will translate some of that with you this morning. Through my diagnosis, I realized that I was going to lose all my hair and my breasts. I was going to undergo months and months of chemo and go through a double mastectomy. And so that was a lot to take in. At the same time, I'm an art historian who's really interested in the way the body is represented in the history of art, and particularly body aesthetics and what's considered beautiful. And for all the research I've done and all the cultures I've looked at, for women, the most beautiful attributes through all space and time is hair and breasts. So I was like, great, thanks a lot. On top of trying to survive, I'm losing these things, right? But that's only the beginning, right? Because it doesn't, like I said, doesn't change you, it transforms you. It's beyond that. So I start looking at things, right, differently with a new eye. And I love this campaign. This is a campaign about awareness of breast cancer and making sure that we all look at our breasts and are aware, because early detection is key. And you've heard this a lot. So here's an artist from Portugal who's putting down together this campaign. And he has two types, which I find very interesting. And this is the kind of stuff that intrigues me as an art historian. So comparing the light-skinned nipple or the light-skinned breast to the dark-skinned breast. And note, these are very subtle changes. Look how he represented the bodies of the women. And I started to think, well, that's interesting. Why does he have kind of a curvier, more casual woman with the darker breast and a very svelte and kind of chic woman in the lighter breast? I think that's interesting. I mean, they're both types, but that's the type of stuff I look at and makes me think about, what is he thinking about identity? What is he thinking about color, women, class? All of that is involved in this, just the simple message. And everything we look at, if we can deconstruct it that way, they'll be so much more meaningful. So I've always been interested in identity politics and how our bodies represent our ethnic, our religious, our linguistic identity, our gender identities, all of these things. We say so much through our bodies in the representation of the body. And so, and of course, in the history of art, nothing is represented more than the human body. We like ourselves. We like to show ourselves over and over again. So let me start with Egypt, because as Sean said, that's my home, that's my area of interest. This is where my discovery of art history all began. And again, I was always fascinated with the human body and its representation. So I want to take you kind of on a quick journey of an example of how identity studies and aesthetic studies can teach us a lot about the works of art. So you guys are familiar with the Great Pyramids of Giza, the big monuments. And as Sean alluded, one of the happiest times of my life was 2 seasons where I was excavating at the workmen's cemetery, the people who built. So this is wonderful, and the pharaohs are great, and they're amazing, but the archaeological record is very biased, always towards the elite, right? The richest, the most powerful. I wanted to see what it was like for the average Egyptian in my studies, right? And so leading me to excavate the workmen's cemetery was taking me on that quest. And it's fascinating because it's a very different picture. But not only was I interested in seeing the average person, I was also interested in studying those marginalized by the archaeological records. Women, children, the poor, the old, the foreigners, all of those were fringe, right, in the archaeological records. So I really wanted to look at those categories. And particularly at the beginning, I started with gender studies. I was really interested in women in ancient Egypt and what their role was. Women in ancient Egypt were very powerful. They were the most powerful in the ancient Mediterranean. They could buy and sell property, they can get married, they can get divorced. They were respected at a level that was different at the time in the ancient Mediterranean. Don't get me wrong, this is a patriarchal society still. But if we compare women in Egypt to women in Greece, women in Egypt had it much, much better. Greek women couldn't leave their house without their head covered or a male companion. That surprises people, right? Because we think of Greek as the origin of Western civilization. But women in Egypt, they could wear these lovely, very provocative outfits, and they could go out and do their thing, and they could divorce their husband, and they can buy property. And here, she's represented. Khamira Nepti is the wife, the queen wife of Pharaoh Menkaure, and they're shown not only as equals, but I would argue that she is holding him. She is supporting him. She is his base, and he is God on earth. So that tells you a lot about women in this respect. Now, if I'm talking about body aesthetics and how the body is represented, this is the ideal body for the ancient Egyptians at this time in the Old Kingdom, about 5,000 years ago. If we look at the male, he's strong, he's powerful, but he's not overly muscular. He's just, just good enough, as I would say. If you look at example, the Greek representation of the male body, it's very different. It's very muscular. It's very detailed in its muscularity. The Egyptians don't see that as an aesthetic. Theirs is a little bit different. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. So if we go back here, we see him standing with his wife. He's wearing this lovely kilt. Oops, this guy really wants to be up there. Okay. settle down. Just wait your turn. Okay, so he's wearing this lovely kilt, right? And again, you see the pectoral muscles are there, but not overly defined. There's not a lot of over definition in the abdominals. And if we look at the woman, a lot of people think she's naked, but she's actually wearing a super sexy, tight-fitting dress, where, it pronounces or it enhances her sexuality. You see the pubic triangle, you see a little belly, and her breasts. So together, these figures represent the ultimate beauty for Egypt at this space and at this time. Of course, as beautiful as this sculpture is, and it is a beautiful sculpture in this black stone, it would have been covered with color, and that surprises a lot of people. So we're skipping you, and we're going back here. And I want to show you very, very small traces of color, but the pharaoh would have been, you see the red over here? He would have been all painted red, and she would have been painted yellow. So it was this sexual dimorphism in the color they give women at this time, and the Egyptians drop this later. At this time, the women are represented lighter skinned than the men. So if we here look at another example of a couple with the color preserved, you see Rahotep and Nofret, and Rahotep is this kind of reddish brown that he typically male are shown in, and Rahotep is yellow. So some students always ask me, what's the distinction here? What's the aesthetic? Are they different racially? And we don't believe that. We believe that actually what they're just trying to say is that he's outside, he's exposed to the sun, he is browner, and she stays inside. Her title is, I love this title, everybody should embrace, all moms should embrace this title, Mistress of the House. She's the mistress of the house. She's not just someone at home, right? She's owning that home. So she's the mistress of the house, and so she's inside and not as exposed, and therefore her coloring is lighter. So it's a relative color. It's not meant to be taken literally. But this is a beautiful, noble couple, and you can see again the colors here. The eyes are inlaid with crystal. There's a wonderful story when this was being excavated in the late 1800s by Auguste Mariette. The French explorer went in there with a torch. The torch lit up the crystals. He freaked out, dropped the torch, came running out and saying, there's someone alive in the tomb. There's someone alive in the tomb, right? That's how realistic it was. And they're like, calm down. Everything's okay. But they are just such these beautiful renditions. So here we see again, when the Egyptians are representing themselves in sculpture, they're representing their ideal beauty. Whether Rahotep and Nofret looked like this is irrelevant. It's how they want to be remembered. This is the features that they want to be remembered with. So a lot of Egyptian women in antiquity wore these beautiful wigs. You can see her actual natural hairline here below, and then a gorgeous wig. You kept your hair short in ancient Egypt. It's hot, right? There's lice, there are issues. So you keep it really short, and then you rock these amazing, amazing wigs as much as you want. The black eyeliner that so many of us associate, right, with ancient Egypt, you can see it here. Both men and women wore makeup and all sorts of things, right? So blush, lipstick, eyeliner. So she's a really iconic beauty, in my opinion, and represents, again, the Egyptian aesthetic at this time. Very quickly, the Egyptians are going to stop the practice of this different color, skin color for the male and women, and the women are going to be appearing in this beautiful red-brown color as well. So you can see changes within time, of course. This is an iconic beauty. Many of you recognize Nefertiti. She's not only a symbol of Egypt, she's a symbol of Africa as a whole. And she is absolutely breathtaking. She happens to have been excavated in the site of Tel El Amarna, which is actually very close to where my mother was born. So we have a nice kind of connection with her as this really, really powerful woman. Now, what you notice about this, and what I love about this aesthetic of this time, is that there's naturalism in it. She's not absolutely perfect. Do you guys notice that she has bags under her eyes? She's tired, right? We all are. That's life. So that's just captured in there, right? It's not kind of washed out in the sculpture. When this piece was discovered by the Germans, who took it to Berlin, I'm bitter, because it's still there, Hitler said, this is so beautiful, it may never leave Egypt. So I'd like to not listen to Hitler and say, bring it back, right, to Egypt. But that's my one little soapbox. But there are so many other items. She's so beautiful that she's captivated. And there's legal court law wars happening as we speak between the Egyptian government and the German government requesting for its return to Egypt. I never saw this piece until my mid-20s when I traveled to Berlin to see it, right? And so most Egyptians will never see this image. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So she's absolutely stunning, has a different type of beauty. She's unfinished. That's why she's missing her eye. But you can really see the person. Again, an idealized person, but you can begin to look at the face of a real person here. So I showed you Nofret. This is Nefertiti. The next woman is Nefertari. And if you're hearing this Nefer means beautiful in Egyptian. So that's all different variations. Nefertiti, Nefertari, Nofret, all of them are variations of beauty. Nefertari is the wife of a little-known king. You might have heard of him, Ramses II. He's huge, very prolific man. He had more than 99 children, very active. Built a lot of monuments, had a lot of kids, but she was his queen wife. She was his first and most important wife. And again, here, I show you her as a symbol of the Egyptian aesthetic of beauty, right? So she's here shown with a goddess. You can see her, this is Nefertari. You can see her, she's pretty slim and athletic, beautiful makeup on, eyeliner, her hair, her wig, her headdress. So this is kind of like the orthodoxy of beauty in ancient Egypt, how Egyptians portray beauty for women for millennia, for thousands of years. We talk in Egypt about thousands of years, right? So where I come in when I was studying for my dissertation is in this little-known period towards the end of Egyptian history, known as the Libyan period. Not very well known, and that's why it was perfect for a dissertation, right? I'm like, ooh, fringe, let me go in there. So what was interesting about this period is that this is a period when Egypt was taken over by foreigners, and these foreigners at this time were from Libya, west of Egypt, right? So I love this painting because it shows awareness. A lot of times in antiquity, we don't think people were aware of ethnic differences or racial differences. They were, and they marked them. So here, what we see here, this is the Egyptian. In Egypt, we refer to these figures as Asiatics, and what we mean by Asiatics is that they come from the Levant, from Syria, from Jordan, from Israel, Palestine, this area, right? So, and then we have the Nubian, and then we have the Libyan. Well, these groups of people were very well studied in Egyptology, but not a lot of people had studied the Libyans because we don't know a lot about them because they're nomadic people. So, and also, look at how cool they look, right? I thought, this is amazing. They've got tattoos, feathered headdress, wonderful cloaks. So I was interested in this period, and I wanted to study it. And once I started looking at art from this period, I noticed some weird changes. So here is a depiction of, this is a funeral stela, like a gravestone, if you will. And it's, again, how you want to be represented for eternity. And I started looking at the way the women are represented, and I noticed some changes. I noticed that the women had, this is her breast, coming, really big breasts. I noticed these folds in the stomach. I noticed big kind of bottoms and heavy thighs. And this is different. This is new. We hadn't seen this in Egyptian aesthetic before. And I'm wondering, why is this happening? Okay, I'm looking at another example from this time. Painting, again, her breast is big, these folds on the stomach. Something is up. Think of the Nefertari one I just showed you, right? She was very slim, right, compared to this. Something's going on. And so my job that year, and this is in grad school, is to figure out or come up with some ideas as to why the female bodies are changing the way they are. The kind of consensus at the time was, well, we have a different ethnic group ruling Egypt. We have these Libyans, and they're bringing their own aesthetics. And that's what's influencing the art. And I was interested in pursuing that idea, but I quickly realized that we don't know anything about the Libyans. We don't have a written record for them. They're nomadic. We don't have a cultural history for them. The Libyans that did come to Egypt and took over, they Egyptianized themselves. They took on Egyptian names. They blended in. So there was really no way to link that. And by the way, just always remember, this is a big lesson for me, that ethnicity is not linked to names. My name is Heidi. So just keep that in mind. That is my real name. They gave that name to me in 1976 in Cairo. It wasn't something I adopted when I moved here. So people give different names for whatever reasons, right? So we don't want to link those together. So I was thinking, no, I don't think it's a Libyan thing. What can it be? Well, here's a great one too. You can really see what I'm talking about, right? Look at these large breasts. And I noticed, well, what they're focusing on are attributes of motherhood. Big breasts, big thighs, big belly. So they're really trying to make an ideal now, a new ideal that's based on the mother figure, the mother's body. And sure enough, I start to look at the religious texts of the time, and who's really popular now? The cult of the goddess Isis, the mother goddess. And so the ideal was being transformed based on these religious beliefs that the ideal female figure is a motherly figure and not this svelte, young, athletic one. Now, they discard this pretty quickly. We had a good run as mothers, but they moved on and went back to the slim, fit ideal, but it was fun while it lasted. And so that was kind of my theory. It's like, but when we look at these images, we have to, again, really try to read, and we'll learn a lot more than we expect. So I want to take you today on a tour around the world. I shared with you my passion for Egypt, and that's definitely where I spent most of the time looking. But I really want you to just kind of let yourself go and come on this tour with me. And we'll go to different parts of the world and different time periods and look at the way the body's been represented and different cultures and why it's represented that way, and to expand your horizons of different methods of beauty or different ideals of beauty. There's so much beauty in our world. We forget that. And that's what helped me through my treatment that whole year is I was like, I'm going to research beautiful things, right? And it gave me strength and it gave me power to see this wonderful world with so much to give. Now, I'm going to tell you here a couple disclaimers. I'm biased. We're all biased, but I'm going to tell you my biases. My biases are I really like paintings, so you'll see a little bit more paintings. I tend to focus more on women just because I'm a feminist art historian and I feel like women don't get a lot of attention, but I'll do my best to be as inclusive as possible. And the objects I selected, they're my favorite objects. Some of them you might like, some of them you might not. But I'm going to try to share with you what I considered really meaningful through this journey. And I'm going to take you all over the world. And just kind of bear with me. And we're going to stay in Africa and look at other parts to see other traditions there. And I want to start with this beautiful terracotta head from Nigeria. And it's this gorgeous woman made of clay. In the Nigerian creation myth, like actually many myths, humans are made from clay. So the medium is really important, right? And we're looking here at this beautiful face that's serious, but introspective. And she has these wonderful lines that run down her face that represent scarification, which is part of her initiation ritual into her group, her community. She also has these folds in the neck that are very prominent, not to be taken literally. This is symbolic of being wealthy enough, having a fat neck is a good thing, right? So having these layers and folds in your neck. Her features are beautiful. Her outside also indicates almost her inside psyche, right? Of this like calm and contemplation. When this was discovered in the early 1900s by German anthropologists, they said, oh, Africans didn't make this. This is not an African piece. The Greeks came here and made these. Don't you love that train of thought? Yeah. This is the lost city of Atlantis. This is what we've been talking about. No. This is a Nigerian culture that has made these wonderful pieces that have such beauty and such power in them. So again, just kind of expanding our ideas of aesthetics. Here's a king, an Oba, also from Nigeria. And I just want you to invite you to again look at the face and how beautifully it's been created, the thick lips, the broad nose, the almond-shaped eyes. He has this wonderful beaded headdress that's made out of coral beads put together. And he would have been placed, a head like this would have been placed at an altar with an elephant ivory tusk in it. like that to add to it. So these, again, heads were found for ancestor veneration. A lot of the art, whether it's Egyptian or here in West Africa, has meaning. It's not decorative, right? It has functional meaning to the people. So here's another example. And I also want to, if you haven't heard of the wonderful plaques from Benin, I have to share these with you. These are these wonderful brass plaques that would have been attached to the palace pillars and decorated where the king lived. And again, what we see with beauty here, beauty's in power, beauty's in community. He is surrounded with people. He has lots of accoutrements, a lot of things to kind of show his power. Wonderful necklaces, wonderful kilt, anklets up to his knees practically. So we know he's the most important person. He has his community at his side, shielding him, protecting him. So beauty here is about that communal power, okay, more than anything else. So if we look here at a detail of him, you can see, again, the pride in it. It's not meant to be naturalistic. That's not what they're going for. That's not what they're aiming for. And so it's a different aesthetic. It's a different type of beauty. I'd like to show you some contemporary African artists really quick. This is actually one of my favorites, Geechee Muthu, who's a Kenyan artist that lives in Brooklyn now. But she is inspired by the concept of the African heads and has created her own contemporary example again. Look at how beautiful this is, right? Even though it's on its side, you can see the detail in the face and the hair, and you can see it here from a different angle. And again, just calling attention to a different aesthetic, a different type of beauty. If we go to East Africa and we look at Eritrea, we have a beautiful contemporary painting here where the beauty is about family and coming together with your child. The eyes are huge, they're exaggerated on purpose. And what I love about this is that together, their face makes one, right? You guys see that? The two profiles coming together. So there's the beauty of that connection. Now I want to talk about African American art right now and the concept of blackness as beautiful, which we have struggled with in this country and was a big, big part of our civil rights movement, is again, not just looking at rights, but embracing aesthetics that were normally put to the side as not beautiful. So in this movement in the 60s, we have Black is Beautiful movement where women and men decide, I'm going to keep my natural hair. I'm not going to react to what the majority wants because we are proud of our own beauty. And this is a movement that happened in the United States, as I said, in the 60s and 70s and 80s. But I have to tell you, as an Arab American, this is happening in the Arab world now, where I have always left my hair curly. Those of you who've known me before. And I was a rebel. I was a rebel. Even to this day, in contemporary times, they're like, you're crazy. You're going out like that without straightening your hair? But that's what I had wanted to embrace. But that's changing. I go back home now, and I see more and more women embracing their naturally curly hair rather than, spending all the time and money and energy on straightening it. So whether you've got your natural hair, whether you choose not to shave your legs, you're embracing your own ideal and you're not reacting to another aesthetic. And that's what makes us beautiful, is the world is diverse and you have all these different types of beauty. And that's really the thing I want to share with you today. All the different ways you can still be proud of your origin and show your beauty. I love this. Muhammad Ali is one of my father's favorite figures, so I grew up always hearing about him. He's completely idealized in our household. My husband has met him. It's just he's a great figure, and I love this photo because he's just want to fight also. But he's so himself, right? He's just laughing. He's got, a little space between his teeth. He doesn't care. His hair is there, and he is beautiful just as he is. And so we just want to constantly, again, expand our definitions of beauty and aesthetics rather than try to conform to whatever that one thing we think is. I'm going to take you somewhere very far away now. Switching gears, let's go to Japan. Japan has been a place that's always fascinated me, very foreign to me. I'm going there for spring break for the very first time. Booked my tickets. I'm excited because life is short. If you want to go somewhere, you go there, right? So off to Japan we go this spring break, and I want to share with you a completely different aesthetic than what I've shown you in Africa, but just as beautiful, right? That's the whole point. So this is a woodblock print showing Genji, who's an important literary figure in Japan from the tale of Genji, one of the earliest novels written by a woman, I should say, right? Genji is described in literary sources as the most beautiful man you've ever seen. Men and women look at him and they cannot believe how beautiful he is. Look at how he's represented here. He's seated. He's got these yummy treats. I can't wait to eat food in Japan. It's high on my list. He's got yummy treats. He's got tea. He's sitting in a balcony. There's a beautiful snowscape scene behind him. But look at him. His body is of no significance. It's not about the body in this aesthetic, right? It's about lineage. It's about who you are. So the focus, he's covered with these luxurious textiles, and that's the aesthetic there. His face is painted white, right? And he even has a little bit of kind of blush and makeup on. He's got a very fancy hairstyle, but that is the aesthetic at that time. So it changes so much from place to place and in the same place from time to time, which I'll show you shortly. Here's another really a nice example I like to show. Again, two literary figures that are important in Japanese history, Benkei and Yoshitsuna, who are two different examples of male beauty. Benkei is this one here, and he's kind of more what we would recognize as Westerners, the more traditional like macho man. He's like tough, muscular, he's a warrior monk. And then the other warrior, Yoshitsuna, is, some would say he's more effeminate in his look. He's still very powerful, and both are sex icons. They're both seen as beautiful men in their own way. But one of the professors I was listening to talk about the figures, he described Yoshitsuna as kind of like almost like boy band beauty. Like he literally described him. Imagine like this was like Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and then this is Justin Timberlake, right? And when he said, I was like, you know what? I'll remember that. I'll remember different types of aesthetics, different types of beauty, right? Or different types of attraction. So that's another example of the male figure. If we jump to the Meiji period, which is a period where there's strong European influence on Japan, and I think you can see that here, especially in their clothing and just the way that this portrait is done of the imperial family. The color is gorgeous. I can't get over the color. But again, this is the imperial family shown as an ideal, the emperor, the empress, the prince, the son, but very Europeanized in this particular example, right? Especially with the clothing. So again, you're seeing all these different aesthetics. Now this is my favorite one. This is a woman. It's a beautiful piece, and it's entitled, roughly translated to Morning Hair, which I love. She didn't have a chance. Her comb is right here. She's gonna brush her hair later, but her hair is disheveled. She's sitting in the pillow, and she's stunning. She's stunning in every way. Her makeup is very, very minimal, and she's staring into space, maybe after a sultry night, maybe, there's a whole story behind it. The interesting thing about this is another woodblock print. They made 200 prints of these. 70 sold like hotcakes, and then people thought, woof, this is too scandalous. The 130 prints that were left over were destroyed. So this is a very rare print. Only 70 because too much to handle. Too much beauty. Too much beauty to handle. This comes from a series or a tradition in Japanese art known as the bijinga, which are beautiful person pictures. And some were, just like I said, just captivated people. And I see why. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous rendition. Now, if we look at contemporary Japan, this is going to make you laugh. Keep an open mind. We have an artist here who is challenging notions of beauty and challenging the binaries between East and West. This is Morimura, and he was an art historian, and he studied in Japan. He's Japanese, and he complained that all his art history classes in Japan were about Western art. And he's like, what about us? We've got stuff, right? So what he decided to do is create this series called The Daughters of Art History, where he decided to take over or reclaim some of the famous European paintings and make himself the star. So, so you take Manet's Olympia, right? French Impressionist Manet's Olympia, and then he puts himself as the star. He's a photographer, and he is basically asking us to question, again, that binary division between East and West, and also gender fluidity. We're taking an Asian man in a place of a French woman, right? So he's trying to do some big ideas here, even though it seems really, really funny and whimsical. What I love, his addition to this scene, is right here, the Maniki Noko, which is the good luck cat that he included, which I love. And if you go back here, you'll see the French version had this super freaked out, stressed out cat, right? And then his version of it. So I love the contrast, and I love the interplay and the inner dialogue between the cultures in that way. So we leave Japan, and we go to China. I know, this can take, I could be here all year telling you this, but I'll make it brief, I promise. We'll get through it in an hour. Let's go to China. And the first place that I think of, because it absolutely fascinates me personally, are the terracotta warriors that are in the burial or the mausoleum of Emperor Shi Huangdi, starting at the Qin dynasty, the biggest dynasty in China, where they discovered in the 1970s, a farmer discovered over 8,000 figures. 8,000 figures and counting. Some numbers are bigger than that. Hundreds of chariots and horses. Each one individualized, representing an ideal. Okay. So if we look at the warriors here, all of these guys, by the way, and I've seen these in person, they are amazing. You just stand and you look at them with awe. They all would have been painted. The color's lost. They would have been vividly painted. But again, they're representing a warrior ideal, an ideal of beauty in so many different forms, with so many different hairstyles, with so many different outfits that come together to show us a Chinese aesthetic. Right? And I have to show you, because when I saw them on exhibit, they had examples of this is how colorful they were. We forget that, right? And I always, in my ancient art classes, I always tell students, we're looking at the remains, whether we're in Egypt, whether we're in Greece, whether we're in China. Objects were vividly colored. Color was very, very important to the ancient world. Okay? So that's lost to us, those details. So think of that. Speaking of color, I love this scroll because it's a beautiful, again, rendition of color. These are court ladies preparing newly woven silk. And what I love about this detail here, they're ironing it with a very old school iron, right? Like a pan with a bunch of coals in it, and it just kind of creases the wrinkles in the silk as they spread it. But look at how beautiful the children are involved. The women have these lovely fabrics, their decoration in the face. I'll show you some details here. Their ornamentation in the hair. It's a very, again, refined beauty. It's a very, very powerful aesthetic. Look at here. You can see these wonderful little rosettes and a perfectly done hair, and the beautiful eyes and the eyebrows, the tiny mouth, the white skin, all of that, it reflects the aesthetics of this place at this time. Here's another nice, beautiful detail of the fabrics of the woman as well. So, showing you just different examples, right? This one too, the next piece I'm going to show you is really important. It's really powerful. This is a Buddhist goddess. She is the goddess of love, mercy, compassion. She is powerful and beloved. But the most interesting thing about this goddess is that she wasn't always a goddess. She used to be a god. And at this time, in the first millennium, she got switched over. And the very deity that was a god turned into a goddess. If you were to look at representations of her 50 years before, she would have a mustache. But now, again, that gender fluidity, that being able to transform and transcend those binaries, right? So you can see that she has breasts now, right? You can see that, very subtle, as this is early on in the transformation. The folds in the neck, again, represent more femininity, more fecundity. Her pose, a lot of art historians say, is very masculine. The way she's seated kind of in command. But that's what made her so powerful, is that she had that confidence that's typically associated with masculinity, but then she had the receptiveness and openness that's typically associated with femininity. So she's the best of both worlds, and you come to her and you ask for salvation, right? And you ask for love, and you ask for hope. And so she's utterly beautiful in this sense, not to mention that she's, carved out of wood, right? To just throw that in there. We're not even talking about the technical skills in these works. We're just talking about the final product. So think about that. Think about the fluidity and the power of the fluidity of the gender in this case. Off to India. Very colorful place, a very fascinating place, with a very different aesthetic than anything I've shown you so far this morning, right? And that's the whole point of this lecture. So we have these spirits that are shown on walls of Indian temples that represent, again, the male and the female, the power of both, and their bodies are represented as such. When Victorian British visitors came, they fainted at the sight of this. Oh, there's too much. There's too much to look at. I'll show you another one where you kind of see what happened. I mean, I was almost going to faint, but look at this figure. Again, they would be here on the temple. They represent the yakshas and the yikshis. They're earth spirits together. They're creators, right? And they represent absolute beauty. The woman is very feminine, very voluptuous, very curvy. The man, he kind of almost reminds me of the Egyptian aesthetic. He's not overly muscular. He's just kind of a healthy guy. And what I usually describe to my students is that think of the yoga type body, right? So he practices a lot of yoga and breathing. He's probably really flexible. That's the aesthetic. That's the aesthetic, not the hyper muscular one. Now here's the one that I think people fainted at. Wow. Okay, so she's a yakshi, and she is all woman. She's all woman. Yes, right? So I mean, it's not supposed to be literal or naturalistic. Again, it's supposed to be the focus on the body, the large breasts, the belly, the hips. Honestly, I'm going to admit this, I was watching some rap videos yesterday, and I saw Nicki Minaj, and Nicki Minaj is trying to copy this figure. When you go see her, you will think of this yakshi now, okay? Because all those curves that don't seem right and natural, they're an aesthetic. They're an ideal, okay? So just kind of think of that. She's beautiful. These scenes of the paintings, and again, I told you I have a bias towards the paintings. This shows beautiful aesthetic in Indian women here, again, where the focus is on ornamentation. If you've ever been to an Indian wedding, you'll see that everyone has a lot of jewelry, henna on the hands and feet, right? Decorative, beautiful saris, layers of clothing. And so what I love here too is some of you in the front can see the transparency of them. You can actually see the breasts come through the clothing, but it's very kind of a modest rendition of that. It's not as overt as the previous slide. And their hair is covered for modesty as well. So you see a beauty that emphasizes these delicate features, very strong, powerful eyebrows, lips, petite figures, petite, skinny figures. And this one I love, again, because it's such a natural moment. She's wringing out her hair, right? So that beautiful moment where she's getting excess water out, but the emphasis, again, is on that long, black, silky, beautiful hair here in India, right? The eyes, again, the big eyes, the dramatic eyebrows. They're owning it here. That's the aesthetic. For the men, again, it's not so much about the body. This is Emperor Jahangir, very, very powerful Mughal period emperor. It's about status. It's about power, right? So his body is engulfed in these wonderful robes and pearls and a headdress and feathers, and he's divine-like with a nimbus around him, right? And that's where, again, the male aesthetic is different than the female. And here we see a couple, a lovely couple. The ornamentation is the aesthetic. All of the decoration that goes into the jewelry, the clothing, that puts them together. And this, I love how this is a prince offering his mistress wine, not just anyone, right? All right, well, now I'm going to take you to yet a different place. And we're going to go to North America. We're going to talk about the aesthetic here. One of my favorite pieces of Native American art is this effigy pipe. It's my favorite. It's a bittersweet. It makes me sad because we have so few remnants of Native American art. So whatever we have, we hold dear. And people say, oh, well, maybe there wasn't a lot of art. There was. It was destroyed. We lost it. And so when we see these snippets of it, it gives me, to have a beautiful ceramic piece like this makes me wonder what else we have lost, right? And so we see this beautiful boy. And here, I love the angle this side. You can see his features, his very prominent nose and his thick lips, and the wonderful way his hair is put together. And his body, again, is transformed for a purpose. This is a ritual object. This is not just for decoration. So this gives us a glimpse of the beauty we've lost, in my opinion. Okay, that hopefully, maybe we can find more, but this is a beauty we have lost. Doesn't mean that it's all gone. There's plenty of vestiges of Native American art, and that's why I like to share with you one of my favorite Native American photographers. Matika Wilbur has been obsessive in her attempt to document as many Native American tribes and nations as possible through photography to show a more well-rounded perspective of who Native Americans are today. The two photos I've selected I thought were very powerful because they were taken in San Francisco at a two-spirit powwow where in the Native American tradition you're embraced for your two spirits, your kind of your two different identities and gender are embraced. And so San Francisco usually hosts one of the biggest in the country, these powwows. And Wilbur was able to photograph some of the people that were there in these very, very beautiful, intimate settings. And she really wants to, and if you just check out her website, she's got wonderful, wonderful images from all over the country, all different nations and tribes, all different types of Native Americans, so that we move beyond the stereotype, right, in the binary, and look at a more full perspective of the community. In Mesoamerica, and again, I'm going to be overwhelmed, like I can do a whole lecture just on this, right? But I'm just picking my favorites, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's just I like them. It was fun for me, and I'm going to talk to you about them. This is a beautiful piece. Another ceramic piece from a small village in Mexico, but it captures such beauty, in my opinion. It captures the simplicity. She is beautifully done. All the details in her face are there. She has this wonderful robe with fringes. It would have had color on it. Her feet are beautifully, the way her toes fan are beautifully done together, and just her expression of liveliness looking at us. It's a small piece. It's, again, not meant to be kind of a superstar in a museum piece, but I find it really beautiful and really personal. In contrast to that, if I look at something that's more of a big item, this is Lord Pakal. And he, again, is going to embody the aesthetic, the beauty for the Maya people, discovered in the 1950s. One of the things that I always find so beautiful about him is how striking he looks, and that is the Mayan aesthetic at that time, is to have this very, very defined, prolonged nose, very angular nose, and a sloped forehead. And that was a sign of royalty, and people tried to mimic that, and it was an instant sign of beauty. And so we see some of the color that's been lost to us, and his lovely lips. You see a different aesthetic. He's supposed to even embody, some art historians have mentioned that he embodies the god of corn, that there's an aspect of him that's kind of channeling that. You definitely see it in his headdress and how it kind of comes together. So a beautiful face, a different aesthetic from what we've been looking at. And how can I talk about Mexico without talking about Frida? Here's a woman that defies the constructs of mainstream beauty and has become now world-renowned for it, as well she should. Frida had a very painful life and suffered a lot. But she channeled that to her art, and now she's become iconic. I think I read something like 1 out of 3 of Frida's paintings are self-portraits. So there's a lot of self-identity and reflection in her work. What I really like about it, and those of us know about this, right? Her iconic unibrow, because she thought it was just nonsense for us to all sit there and pluck our eyebrows, and it's painful, and make it all look the same. And she's like, you know what? This is what I got. I'm going to rock it. And she did. She did, and she encourages others to take that chance as well. Even more boldly, she always loves to highlight her mustache. Not as a sign of, this is not beautiful, but this is beautiful, and that's why I'm putting it in here. I'm redefining beauty, and I am redefining it on my own terms. And it takes women like this to help us all redefine our own sense of beauty and be confident in who we are. And not to have to, if you want to fit to an ideal and it works for you, great. But also if you want to do your own thing, that's also great. And that's what I think really resonates with Frida. My students love Frida when we talk about her. They are so connected to her, they get her, because she's taken a risk. She took a risk, and now she's memorialized for it in a good way. Quick stop, very quick stop in South America. And I want to show you this piece because I just absolutely love it. It's a moche jar. But look at this face. The beauty is the emotion, is the happiness, right? And that smile, and so many of us, when we see a good smile, you can't help but smile. And that is beautiful. And so even though this is a jar, this is a functional piece, the beauty that's in it representing this person. Just the creases in his eyes, the open mouth, the way his cheeks fold, everything about him comes together. And I see so many smiling faces in the audience right now. I love it, just by looking at him, right? So he was worth my quick stop in South America. Oceania, take you a place far away and look at yet another ideal of beauty. This is the Maori from New Zealand. What I love about the ideal of beauty here is age. An old man is beautiful in his wisdom. He's beautiful in his experience. And it comes together perfectly. I was hesitant about including this particular series of portraits because the artists weren't Maori. It was a European artist, and I've really tried to kind of keep things made by the people from the region I was looking at. But this artist was so beloved in the Maori community, and they begged him, please do a portrait of us. We really like it, because then we could live forever. And he does a good job capturing, again, the respect and the humanity, the wisdom, and the knowledge of this figure. He has a beautiful moko, which is the tattooing of the face, which is typical in the Maori culture. The men get the full moko. The women get their lips and chin tattooed as a symbol of, again, solidarity and community. Now, I want you all to think of this. If you've ever had a tattoo, it's painful. And where is she getting it tattooed? On her lips, because that's how badass she is, right? She is strong. She is powerful. And that's all, you could just see that right when you look at her face. Up until 1907, it was illegal to have moko in New Zealand, right? It was not okay. They were suppressing a lot of the native traditions, the indigenous traditions. But then we have a resurgence in the 80s where a lot of young Maori have embraced it, and you see a huge amount today where they've embraced it and are bringing back the tradition of the moko and the tattooing. So just saying, hey, there's a different aesthetic out here. This is our aesthetic, and we want to be represented, right? So again, the diversity in what we're looking at. Europe. I want to take you to Europe to look at some of the most beautiful paintings that I have selected. Some of you are like, she chose that one? Seriously? Of all the things? Yeah. One of my absolute favorite paintings is Botticelli's The Birth of Venus. Now, this is, again, very famous. I think a lot of you are really familiar with it. But here again, we see an iconic Western beauty. And this is, in many ways, kind of our mainstream sense of beauty. That's what we've been kind of, at least for me, I've been taught. This is beautiful, right? But I've just shown you that there's so many other ways of beauty as well. But this is nonetheless still extremely beautiful. Or the long hair, the soft body. And it's created at this time when it would have been very unacceptable to show a female nude, but it's okay because it's Greek myth. And so in this Christian era, in the Renaissance period, early Renaissance period, they got a get out of jail free card if they did anything mythologically related, because then the Christian paradigm didn't have to be observed. So they got to do really wonderful things and show the body in its new aesthetic. So it's just an utterly gorgeous figure to look at in so many ways. Another Birth of Venus that I really love is Cabanel's example of her here. Again, look at that body. Absolutely gorgeous. Famous writer, Émile Zola, described that she's not made out of flesh, she's made of marzipan. And I love that. Every time I look at that, I'm like, yummy. Like, she's just so sensually beautiful. She calls all the senses, right? In that kind of iconic, lovely sense. Now, in contrast to this, here's another one of my favorites. She's awesome, and she's beautiful. This is a French artist, Suzanne Valadon, which shows us, hey, I can do a reclining woman. She doesn't have to have her clothes off. She's clothed. She's smoking, which is taboo. She's reading, God forbid. Woo. And she's a little heavy, and that's okay. And that's beautiful as well, right? And so again, there's just such a wide range of beauty. And I want to ask you all today to think about where you are in this spectrum, what you feel is most beautiful, and more importantly, why? Why are you connected to that aesthetic? This is another one that I find absolutely lovely. This is Marc Chagall's birthday. Marc Chagall is a Russian-French, he's actually born in Belarus, Jewish artist who represents beauty. Again, he's not going for the naturalism, he's going for emotion. This painting was commemorating a visit by his fiancée Bella, who came to wish him a happy birthday on his 28th birthday, and he literally felt like he was flying, and he wanted to kind of show his emotion and his love. And he also believed in color. I love color. And he felt like color was love and beauty. So his paintings are usually really, really vivid. So you're seeing, again, just so many different ways in that quick snippet of European art, right, of expressing the body and a sense of beauty. Right here, right now, in the United States, I want to share with you a few artists as we wrap things up. First, I'm going to start with an old master. John Singer Sargent is a master of American painting. He's very influenced by the European style. And I love this painting because it was another one that came out. It represents this beautiful 24-year-old woman that was scandalous. It was crazy that he had to call it Madame X. Don't put her name on it. She's revealing too much. It's too much to handle. And also, he had to fix it up because this, one of her straps was falling over in kind of like a sexy, fun way. No, fix that. So he put it back up. So he had to call her Madame X, and he had to fix the strap to suit our needs, to suit our aesthetics at the time, which tells us a lot, right, about American aesthetics at the time. But he's very kind of conventional, but she is a beauty to look at, and she was a beauty. He was taking a portrait of one of the most beautiful women in this kind of elite society, on the East Coast in the United States. Now, for someone different, I want to share with you, some of you may have heard of Mary Cassatt, who's an American impressionist, and she did the impossible. She was able to break through the boys' club of French impressionists and show with them in Paris. And they respected her work. Now, I share this painting with you because this painting, I went through a transformation with this painting. I used to teach this painting years and years ago, and honestly, I found it kind of boring. I was like, meh. And then I had a kid. And then I was like, oh, this painting's amazing. This is so beautiful. I can't believe it. And so I changed, and therefore my reception of an artwork also changed. And that happens, and I want us to be in tune with that. And I want us to constantly revisit things, even if we thought, that's not my thing. So all of a sudden, I was like, oh, look at the little feet, and oh, the little chubby body. And because I became a mom, and I could relate to it, right, in a way that I wasn't relating to it before. And so be open to change. Be open to transformation. Another personal change I had was with this movie, and I'll explain to you why. Black Panther came out in the summer. I was deep into chemotherapy, and my 10-year-old son was like, Mom, we gotta go see Black Panther. I'm like, yeah, I don't do superhero movies. He's like, no. He went to see it. He went to see it on his own. He'd seen it already. He came back to me. He's like, Mom, you're gonna like Black Panther. I'm like, I don't do superhero. He made me watch it. And I didn't understand why. As I was watching it, I got the big picture, but what really happened that was amazing, and I had no hair on my head, right? Bald like an egg. And I go with this, and I see these women come out, and my son looks at me, and he goes, Mom, she looks like you. And then I had a new relationship with this movie. And I realized that there is an aesthetic in baldness, and that baldness can be beautiful, and it can be empowering. Even when I felt like all of that was stripped away, right? And it was just this beautiful moment. I will never forget it. And now this movie means so much to me. And it is successful in creating a different sense of beauty than we're used to, right? And challenging our aesthetics in a new way. So it's all around us. We're all talking about it, whether you're aware of it or not, the subject of beauty and redefining it. Just as I was putting my final touches on this lecture, this article, thanks a lot, February 6th, just a few days ago, comes out. And I'm like, dang it! Stop telling me! But it was perfect, because the whole point of it is beauty in the eyes of the colonizer. Yes, we've been told this is beauty. I want you to throw that out, and I want you to find your own sense of aesthetic. And I've given you a little survey, just scratching the surface, all around the world of what's there, right? I want us to broaden our horizons. We are a beautifully diverse community. We're a beautifully diverse country, of which I'm very proud to be a part of. And let's embrace that in the aesthetics and our sense of beauty. And I think we're making some headway. I really feel like there's a huge turning point. I could not believe that Miss America's pageant rules said you had to be of good health and the white race. It's not that long ago. As a historian, for me, that was just yesterday, right? So, again, let's just celebrate all of the different forms of beauty. There's just so much out there. So I'm going to conclude with one of my favorite pieces. This is an Etruscan from Italy, Etruscan sarcophagus lid, where they believe that they're going to be together forever in eternity as a couple. And it's Valentine's Day, so it's a good way to end it. Right? These individuals are going into the afterlife together. They're in this most intimate scene, holding each other, looking into each other's eyes for eternity, right? And inside the sarcophagus would have their cremated remains as they move forward. I can't help but notice, and other art historians too, there's a heart that's formed with their bodies, right? It's so beautiful. And so I want to have this up while I invite you to, again, become aware of your own aesthetics expand it, redefine it, change it, challenge it all the time, right? When you're interacting with people, with works of art, with whatever it is that's visually pleasing to you. And also know that each of us has his or her own battle that you might not know anything about. So that compassion that you bring to your family, to your colleagues, to your student will help also widen your aesthetic, and you'll be more receptive to beauty. Thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day. Oh my God. Oh my gosh, this is kind of nuts. Thank you. Thank you. Sit down. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for sharing all of your knowledge and passion and yourself. I have the privilege of offering you this small symbol of our appreciation. Heidi Saleh, the 2019 Tauzer Lecturer.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.